Hi readers, Chris here. Today will be the first of many videos that I'm going to do over the next few weeks while I catch up on book reviews. Today I'm going to be talking about the popular House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the Crescent City series. It just came out in February. I read it last month, or I should say finished it last month, and I've been trying to figure out what I want to say about this book, because I know it's super popular and I know a lot of people love it, but here's the thing, I did not love it. I'm going to break it down like I usually do, world building, characters, and plot, non-spoilers. I'm not going to do any spoilers at the end of this one. I feel like spoilers might need its own separate video, so if anyone wants to see a separate spoiler video, please leave it in the comments section below. So let's jump in with world building. If you're not familiar with the world of Crescent City, basically we have this city called Aaaaaaaand, or Crescent City for short, where basically all sorts of magical creatures live in quote-unquote harmony. So we've got werewolves and other types of shifters, we've got fae, fairies, we've got sprites, we've got angels, we've got wraiths, and they all kind of belong to like different houses. Like there's different quarters of the city that are kind of overseen by different leaders. So like the werewolves and the shifters kind of have their own leader. The fae, they kind of have their own leader. And our main character in this story, Bryce, Quinlan, she is part fae, part human. So her father is a well-known fae ruler and her mother was a human. And then we have Hunt. Hunt is an angel, and I could do a whole video on his background. But long story short, basically, he has been alive for a really long time. He was part of a rebellion in the past, but that rebellion failed, and as a result of that, he kind of had to like serve time as like a slave to his other angel leaders. But he helped solve this, murder in the previous book. So now he's kind of been freed. He's trying to lay low, even though he's still a warrior. So this world is basically ruled by this group of people that are known as the Asteri. The Asteri are basically a group of angels, but not just regular angels. They have all this like superhuman power. Everyone is terrified of them. Like they have all this power. No one can oppose them or do anything about it. So it's very much it's kind of like set up like a dictatorship. They have all the power and then everyone else is underneath. But just like in the past, there is this like rebellion that's brewing. We only kind of heard about it in book 1, but in book 2, it takes front and center stage. And of course, Bryce and Hunt are, because of everything that happened in book 1, they're trying to lay low and kind of stay out of the limelight. But unfortunately, they end up getting pulled into this rebellion and rebellious plots, and shenanigans ensues. So that's like a really, really, really simple setup. Really simple setup. So as far as world building goes, that's probably one of the things I like most about this book. Even though I have issues with the book, which I'll share later on, I do love the world. I love the fact that there's all these magical creatures. There's so many different types. For example, I think I mentioned this in a previous video, but there's like magical otters that deliver messages. Can you just imagine little otters running around delivering messages? Super cute. So there's a lot here as far as world building that I really, really love. And I see so much potential for so many stories. But at the same time, there's just a lot of stuff that's convoluted. So just like in book one rockets a lot of information at you and you kind of have to absorb it as you go. This book, because you already have the setup, it's not as bad. But there are still certain things, especially when it comes to the rebellion. The rebellion, even though we heard about it in the previous book, is still pretty new here. And it's full of new characters with new motivations. And honestly, I kept on getting confused about, we have the rebellion, and at one point it's like, ooh, the rebellion is good because they're fighting the power. But then in other parts of the story, it's like, well, sure, the rebellion is fighting the power, but the way that they're doing it is kind of not great. So we're not fans of the rebellion. It's kind of like they kind of ride this line where they're trying to help the rebellion achieve their goal, but they're trying to not be part of the rebellion because they don't agree with their methods. So it was a little bit convoluted, I thought, and that probably has more to do with the plot than the world building, but I want to mention it up front as just like one of the many reasons why I'm just not as big a fan of this book as other people are. So let's jump into our characters. And there are so many characters in this book, this series. So many. But our main two characters are Bryce and Hunt. They were our main characters in book one. They're our main characters here. And yes, there are other characters like Bryce's brother, Rune, or half-brother, I should say. He plays a very big part here, a very big part. But pretty much Bryce and Hunt are still our two main characters. And this is a small spoiler from book one. So if you don't want to know anything about anything, jump forward like about a minute here. But, Bryce and Hunt got together at the end of book one. So now they're a couple here. And as a couple, I find them a little bit annoying, if I'm being honest, a little bit annoying. Here's the thing about Bryce. I don't like her. I don't like Bryce. I'm sorry. I didn't like her in book one, but I came to understand her a bit, but I don't like her again in book two. In book one, Bryce very much came off, well, she started the book as like this party girl who lived life very frivolously. She just drank, did drugs, had casual sex, like there was no substance to her. But then she goes through a trauma and she changes, but she doesn't let the outside world know that she changed. And she doesn't even let the reader know that she changed until about halfway through the book. And by that time, I had already spent so much time disliking her that it was hard to come back, but I understood that she was trying to protect herself, so fine, I agreed with that. In this book, though, she still continues to be not a great person to the people that actually care about her in her life. So, for example, her mother, she has a human mother who's obviously, she's a mom. She loves her daughter and is protective of her. And I understand that at certain points, Bryce keeps things from her to, protect her, not get them into trouble. But she also kind of just, I don't know, she kind of treats her mom kind of pushes her away in a way that I don't think is great. And then she has one of her best friends, this girl named Juniper. She is half human, part deer, I want to say, and she's a ballet dancer. And because of the events of book one, because Juniper is associated with Bryce, she couldn't get this part. She couldn't become this principal ballerina that she wanted to. So Bryce, feeling bad about that, decides to exert her influence and power to try and basically go around the politics of the ballet to get Juniper a role. But of course, Juniper wanted to earn that herself. She didn't want Bryce to have to speak up for her. She wanted to do the work. And that's never resolved by the end of this book, but it's just another example of Bryce just does things she's very reactionary and she doesn't think about the consequences. And that can be endearing at times, but unfortunately to me, it's not endearing. It's not endearing at all. And I have to talk a bit about the plot here while I'm still talking about Bryce, because there is a plot that takes up about the first half of the book where there is a missing child. And everyone thinks that this missing child is super powerful and he's going to change the power dynamic between the ruling class, the Asteri, and the rebellion. And the first half of the book is all about finding this kid. And I hate to say this, I don't want to give any spoilers, but the long story short is Bryce takes certain actions that she doesn't tell anyone about, and we, the reader, don't even know about them until after they've already happened. So that plot gets resolved in the first 50% of the book, which is weird because it's like all of a sudden something happens. Bryce did something that we don't know about because we didn't get her POV when she was doing it. We're just seeing it from the outside. We're seeing it from Hunt's point of view. So it feels very random and like, why did that happen? It makes no sense. So again, Bryce does a lot of things on her own, doesn't tell anyone about them, and then gets like upset at the consequences. But the fact is, she's not thinking through things, which kind of, to me, makes her unlikable. So that, I hope that made sense in the way that I was trying to explain it. I'll talk a bit more about it when I get to the plot. But so then we'll talk about Hunt here. And Hunt, I actually liked Hunt in book 1. I thought he had a really cool backstory about, you know, his previous life, his previous love, his previous trying to refight a rebellion, but then he's been a slave for so many years. Like, I really liked Hunt in book 1. In book 2, however, I still like him better than Bryce, but the thing about Hunt that really annoys me is, so first of all, and again, in the first part of this book, they make a really big deal about how Bryce and Hunt have agreed not to have sex for a certain amount of time because they want to make sure that living a normal life and not doing all this other stuff, that like they're really right for each other. So they make a big deal about it. But here's the thing, like every time that Hunt sees Bryce, like all he can think about is basically sex. Like all he comments is about like how much he likes her ass or like other things. There's only like one time I think that he actually said, oh, like he calls her beautiful, but every other time is about like how she looks. And even you can say beautiful as how she looks, but I mean like he doesn't comment about like how smart she is or kind, because she's not really kind, but he, you know what I mean? Like he only comments on her physical appearance 99.9% of the time. I'm sure there's one time where he doesn't, but like 90% of the time, he's only commenting on her appearance and how her appearance affects him, how her appearance makes him horny, basically, for lack of a better word. And I feel like that's a real disservice to his character, and I hate to be one of those people, but like there is a stereotype out there that men only think about one thing, and according to this book, that is 100% true because that's the only thing that Hunt thinks about. And I feel like that's a disservice to his character. Yes, may I be reading into that way too much and taking it too far? Absolutely, but I can't help how I feel. So let's move on to the plot now. Like I mentioned before, the first half of this book is like a missing persons mystery. And it kind of made me feel like in book 1, because book 1 was a murder mystery. Here we had another mystery, and I was along for the ride. But then, about halfway through, 50%, that mystery is resolved like that, with no fanfare. It just happens. And then the second half of the book is something completely different. And because the book takes this weird turn, like, I don't even know how to describe the plot in the second half of this book. There's no way to describe it other than now Bryce and Hunt, they resolved the missing kid issue, and now they've decided that they want to kind of join the rebellion to take down the Asteri, but they're going to do it in their own way. And unfortunately, that plot is not resolved at the end of the book. The book ends on a cliffhanger. It is not resolved. It ends with our heroes in like not a great spot, and I don't want to say too much more without giving it away. But I will say this. These books, the first one and this one, are the first books of Sarah J. Maas that I have ever read. So the things that happen at the end of this book would probably better be appreciated by people that have read more of her books. Because I have not, the significance of the ending was totally lost on me. totally lost on me. Makes no sense. I don't care. And I get that. You know, you're writing a book for people that have read all your books. Okay. But I think that still a good writer should be able to create a story for everyone, even if you haven't read all of her other books. You know what I mean? Like, I should be able to enjoy reading, you know, Misery by Stephen King even if I haven't read every single other Stephen King book. So I get that people that are Sarah J. Maas fans probably love the ending of this book, but I'm trying to become a Sarah J. Maas fan, and I feel like this ending just kind of cuts me out because I'm not a part of that group, and I feel like I don't belong as part of that group, if that makes any sense. So I've talked about world building, characters, and plot, and for lack of a place to put these other things in, there's just a couple other things I want to mention, because here's the thing. I feel like at this point, Sarah J. Maas is not for me. Again, the end of the book really made me feel that way. But, like, again, I said this about book 1. I don't mind cursing and sex in books, but when everyone is doing it all the time, it loses all sense of meaning. All sense of meaning. You want to have one character who curses all the time? Sure, that's fine. You want to have characters that curse in, like, situations that call for it, shocking situations, dangerous situations, fine. But when every single character does it all the time, it loses all sense of meaning to me. And again, with the sex, like, I don't mind sex in books. I've talked about this before. I've read plenty of books where characters have sex and it's beautiful and it's emotional and it's like a work of art. That is not how I felt here at all. The language is crude, it's vulgar, and it doesn't do anything for me. I don't find it sexy at all. I don't. And I also find it really weird that there's certain, like, let's just say there's certain male body parts that are referred to in one way, but then the equivalent on females is referred to differently. And I find that really strange. I don't know. It's just off-putting. So I didn't like that in book 1. It's 10 times worse in book 2. So I was hoping that the plot and the world building would make up for that like it did in book 1, but it didn't. There was no emotional roller coaster here. I didn't cry. I didn't get invested. This book just really fell flat for me. I did not like it as much as book 1. And I'm sorry. I know a lot of people love it. I'm still going to probably read the next one because I want to see how things conclude. But this did not make me want to run out and pick up more of Sarah J. Maas's books. So I might be too old for this series. It might just not be for me, and that's okay because there are plenty of other books out there that are. So if you are a fan of S.J. Maas and Crescent City, I'm so sorry. Please continue to enjoy this series. I know nothing I say will change your mind, and that's great. So that's my review of House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas, the second book in the Crescent City series. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you want to see a spoiler review. Otherwise, there will be more book reviews coming your way soon. Happy reading!